She found two soaking wet kids shivering outside her bakery during the blackout. She wrapped them in blankets, gave them warm bread, and let them sleep. What she didn't know, they were a mafia boss's children. And now dangerous people thought she knew too much. The phone call came at the worst possible moment. Nikolai Vosterkov stood in the shadow of a shipping container, rain hammering the metal roof above him like gunfire. Across from him, 3 men waited for his answer. Men who didn't appreciate being kept waiting. The deal on the table was simple: $5 million for a clean weapons route through Vancouver. No questions asked.
His phone buzzed against his chest.
He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. Anton, his head of security, never called twice, let alone 3 times. "Gentlemen," Nikolai said, his Russian accent turning the word into something sharp. "One moment." He turned away, pressing the phone to his ear. "This better be." "They're gone," Anton's voice cracked. In 15 years, Nikolai had never heard him crack. The warehouse seemed to tilt. "What do you mean gone?" "Adrian and Aria. They left Riverside Academy at 3:47 p.m. The storm hit early. Wine knocked down a tree on Mercer Street. By the time Dmitri got the SUV around the block, they'd vanished. We have footage of them walking toward the pickup point, then nothing. Just static from the traffic cameras." "But sir..." Nikolai's free hand curled into a fist. "But what?" "There's a gray van on the footage."
"No plats."
"It follows them for 2 blocks, then the cameras go dark." The world reduced to a pinpoint. His twins. His 12-year-old children who argued about comic books and left their homework scattered across the dining table.
"Gone."
"Mobilize everyone," Nikolai said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, the tone that made grown men step backward. "Every contact, every favor owed. I want that van found. I want my children found. I want them found now." "Sir, there's a complication. The storm took out half the city's power grid. Traffic systems are down. We're running blind." Behind him, one of the weapon brokers cleared his throat impatiently. Nikolai didn't turn around. "Then get flashlights. I'm on my way." He ended the call and spun toward the 3 men. "We're done here. We haven't agreed on." "I said we're done." Nikolai's hand moved to the gun beneath his coat, not threatening, just reminding.
"Leave. Now."
They left. The drive back to Seattle was a blur of brake lights and flooded streets. Nikolai made 11 calls. He activated contacts in the police department, the harbor patrol, even a corrupted city councilman who owed him for a mistress's gambling debts. Everyone received the same message: find the twins. Ask no questions. Expect no mercy if you fail. By the time he reached his estate in Madison Park, the sky had turned the color of a bruise. Wind tore branches from the oak trees lining his driveway. Inside, the house felt cavernous and wrong without the sound of Aria's laughter or Adrian's footsteps thundering down the stairs. Anton met him in the security room, where 8 monitors displayed nothing but snow and darkness. "Tell me everything," Nikolai demanded. Anton pulled up grainy footage on the single working screen. 2 figures in private school uniforms, Adrian in his navy blazer, Aria with her backpack slung over one shoulder, walked down the sidewalk. The timestamp read 3:49 p.m. They looked so small on the screen. "Here," Anton pointed. "The van appears at 3:51. A boxy gray vehicle rolled into frame, staying exactly 1 car length behind the twins. No front plate. Tinted windows. It followed them around the corner toward their pickup spot. Then the screen went black. "The storm killed the grid at 3:53, Anton said. "We lose them here. Rewind. The van, get me something. Anything." Anton zoomed in, enhanced, adjusted. The van's side mirror reflected a blurred figure in the driver's seat. Dark jacket.
Baseball cap.
Nothing useful. But there, printed on the van's rear panel, barely visible through the rain, was a small decal. Anton enhanced it further. Nikolai leaned closer. His blood turned to ice. It was a shipping company logo, one he recognized. Neptune Global Freight. A company his organization used for their own operations. A company only his inner circle knew about. Anton, his voice could have frozen the rain outside. Who has access to Neptune's vehicles? Anton's face went pale. Only 8 people, sir. Your lieutenants. Someone inside his organization had taken his children. Someone he trusted. Someone who would watch him burn the city down searching while they knew exactly where Adrian and Arya were. Nikolai's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yes. Mr. Vosterkov? A woman's voice, uncertain and nervous. This is Officer Mendez with the Tacoma Police Department. We have a situation here. It's about 2 children. His heart stopped. Are they alive? Yes, sir. They're safe. But there's something strange. They were found at a bakery about an hour ago. The owner called it in. And, sir?
She paused.
They won't let go of her. They keep saying she saved them. What bakery? What owner? Tessa's Sweet Corner. In Tacoma. The woman's name is Tessa Grant. She claims she just found them outside her back door during the blackout, but I'm on my way. Nikolai ended the call, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. 30 miles to Tacoma. 25 minutes if he ignored every traffic law. Behind him, Anton called out. Sir, what about the Neptune connection? What do I do? Nikolai stopped in the doorway, rain already soaking his shoulders. Find out who signed out that van today, he said quietly. And Anton, don't let them know we're looking. The door slammed shut. His children were alive. But someone in his inner circle had betrayed him, and now a random bakery owner in Tacoma was somehow tangled in a web she couldn't possibly understand. The storm raged on as Nikolai's car tore through the night, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. He didn't know it yet, but the woman named Tessa Grant had just become the most dangerous person in his world, not because of what she'd done, but because of what his enemies would think she knew. And in the criminal underworld, perception was everything. The Tacoma Police Department's fluorescent lights made everything look sickly and pale. Nikolai pushed through the entrance at 11:47 p.m., his coat dripping rainwater across the linoleum floor. Every cop in the room looked up. They knew who he was, or at least they knew enough to get out of his way. Officer Mendez appeared from a side hallway, young and clearly rattled. Mr. Vosterkov. They're in interview room C. But I need to warn you. Nikolai brushed past her. He found them through the window first. His twins sat wrapped in oversized blankets that pooled around their feet, steam rising from paper cups of hot chocolate. They were alive. Whole. No visible injuries. But they weren't alone. A woman sat between them, one arm around each child. She had dark hair pulled into a messy bun, flowers still dusting her jeans, and the kind of face that looked like it smiled often, though right now, exhaustion had carved shadows under her eyes. She was talking softly to Arya, who had buried her face against the woman's shoulder. This was Tessa Grant. Nikolai opened the door.
Papa.
Adrian spotted him first and lurched forward, but his hand stayed locked around Tessa's arm. The boy was torn between running to his father and not letting go of this stranger.
Adrian.
Arya, Nikolai's voice nearly broke. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled them both into his arms, blankets and all. They smelled like rain and vanilla and fear. You're safe. I have you. You're safe now. Arya sobbed against his chest. Adrian held on so tightly it hurt. Over their heads, Nikolai met Tessa's eyes. She had backed up slightly, giving them space, her hands now empty and uncertain at her sides. She looked worried. Not frightened of him. Worried for the children. Thank you, he said simply. 2 words that carried the weight of every nightmare he'd imagined in the past 8 hours. I found them, Tessa said, shaking her head. They were behind my bakery, soaking wet. I couldn't just leave them there. Miss Grant, Officer Mendez said from the doorway, we'll need your full statement. I gave you my statement. 3 times. Yes, but... Enough, Nikolai's single word cut through the room. He turned to Mendez. She's done here. I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow with any additional information you require. Tonight, she goes home. Mendez opened her mouth, then thought better of it. Yes, sir. Nikolai gently detached himself from the twins and knelt to their eye level. I need you to tell me what happened. Everything. Adrian glanced at Tessa, then back to his father. We were walking to the pickup spot. The wind was crazy, trees were falling. Then Dmitri called your phone and said he'd be 5 more minutes because of the tree on Mercer. We decided to wait inside the corner store, Arya added, her voice small. But when we turned around, there was a van. 2 men got out. One of them said, "Your father sent us." Nikolai's jaw tightened. But I didn't. We know, Adrian said quickly. We remembered what you taught us. Never go with anyone unless they know the code word. They didn't know it. So we ran. They chased us into an alley. Arya continued, trembling now. They grabbed Adrian, threw him in the van. I screamed, and someone's car alarm went off. That's when they grabbed me too. Tessa's hand covered her mouth. We drove for a long time, Adrian said. Maybe an hour? They had our phones. We couldn't see anything because the windows were blacked out. But then he looked at his sister. The crash, Arya whispered. Something hit the van.
Hard.
The driver lost control, and we hit a barrier or something. The back doors popped open. We ran, Adrian said. Just ran into the storm. We didn't know where we were. Everything was dark because of the blackout. We just kept running until we smelled bread. My bakery, Tessa said softly. I was closing up when the power died. I just pulled the last batch of sourdough from the oven. We saw the light from her oven through the window, Arya said. And the back door was open a crack. We were so cold, Papa. So scared. Tessa's eyes glistened. They collapsed right there on my kitchen floor. I thought they were runaways at first. I brought them upstairs to my apartment, got them into dry clothes, wrapped them in blankets. They fell asleep before they could even tell me their names. You saved them, Nikolai said. Anyone would have. No, his voice was firm. Not anyone. You did. Arya suddenly pulled away from Nikolai and went to Tessa, hugging her tightly. She gave us her son's clothes. And she made us cinnamon toast. She said we were safe now. Adrian moved closer to Nikolai and lowered his voice.
Papa.
There's something else. Something important. Tell me. The boy's face went pale. One of the men in the van, when they grabbed us, his jacket sleeve pulled up. He had a tattoo on his wrist. Nikolai's entire body went rigid. What kind of tattoo? A compass rose, with a skull in the center. The room tilted. That tattoo wasn't random. It was a mark of loyalty within his organization. Only his most trusted lieutenants bore it, a symbol of their oath to the Vosterkov family. Someone in his inner circle hadn't just betrayed him. They'd tried to steal his children. Nikolai's hands curled into fists at his sides. The compass rose tattoo. He'd personally approved every man who'd received that mark, 12 lieutenants sworn to protect his family with their lives. One of them had just tried to take everything from him. Adrian, he said carefully, keeping his voice level despite the rage burning through his veins. Did you see the man's face? The boy shook his head.
He wore a ski mask.
They both did. But Papa, there's more. Officer Mendez shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. Mr. Vosterkov, perhaps the children should rest before. They're fine. Nikolai didn't look away from his son. Tell me everything, Adrian. Every detail, no matter how small. Arya extracted herself from Tessa's embrace and came to stand beside her brother, their hands finding each other automatically, the way they'd done since they were toddlers when the world felt too big. They talked to someone on the phone, Arya said, while we were in the van, before the crash. What did they say? The driver was angry, Adrian continued. He kept saying the schedule changed and Portland doesn't want to wait. Then he said something about a crown case. The blood in Nikolai's veins turned to ice water. The crown case. A code name only 5 people in his entire organization knew. It wasn't about weapons or territory. It was something far worse, a black market smuggling route for high-value human trafficking. Diplomats' children, heirs to fortunes, people who could be ransomed for millions or sold to overseas syndicates. He'd shut down that route 6 months ago after discovering it had been running behind his back. The profits had been enormous, but Nikolai had one absolute rule: no children. Ever. Someone had reactivated it. Someone wanted his twins for ransom, or worse. Did they say anything else about Portland? Nikolai asked.
Arya nodded slowly.
After the crash, while we were running away, I looked back. The van's doors were open and I could see inside. There were zip ties and a briefcase with papers. One of them flew out in the wind, and I saw it for just a second. What was on the paper? Names. And numbers. Big numbers with lots of zeros. She squeezed her brother's hand tighter. And at the top it said, Delivery Manifest, Portland Terminal. Tessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor.
Wait.
Are you telling me these men weren't just kidnapping your children? They were. They were going to sell them? The room went silent. Nikolai turned to face her fully for the first time. Up close, he could see the fear creeping into her expression as the pieces fell into place. The expensive suits of a security team waiting outside, the way the police deferred to him, the military precision of his questioning. Miss Grant, he said quietly, I think you've begun to understand that my family situation is complicated. Complicated, she let out a shaky laugh. Your children were almost trafficked and you're calling it complicated? Tessa, Arya started. No, Tessa held up her hand, backing toward the door. No, I helped because they were children in trouble. That's it. I don't want to know about criminal conspiracies or trafficking rings or whatever this is. I have a son. I have a bakery. I have a normal life. You had a normal life, Nikolai said, and the weight of those words settled over the room like ash. The moment you opened your door to my children, that changed. That's not fair.
No.
It's not. He took a step toward her, his voice softening slightly. But it's true. Whoever took Adrian and Arya now knows they failed. They know my children survived. And they'll want to know what the twins saw, what they remember, what they might have told you. Tessa's face went pale. I don't know anything. I didn't even know who they were until an hour ago. That won't matter to the people hunting them. Officer Mendez cleared her throat. Mr. Vosterkov, are you suggesting Miss Grant is in danger? I'm not suggesting anything. Nikolai pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. I'm stating a fact. By morning, whoever orchestrated this will know exactly where my children were found. They'll come asking questions. Then I'll tell them the truth, Tessa insisted. That I found 2 kids in the rain and helped them. That's all. And they'll kill you anyway, Adrian said bluntly. Because that's what bad people do, right, Papa? They don't leave witnesses. The boy's words, so matter-of-fact, so void of childhood innocence, made Tessa flinch. Arya moved to Tessa's side again, taking her hand. Don't let them hurt her, Papa.
Please.
She gave us her son's clothes. She sang to me when I couldn't stop shaking. Nikolai looked at his daughter, then at this stranger who'd shown his children more genuine kindness in one night than most people in his world showed in a lifetime. Where is your son now? He asked Tessa. With my neighbor, Mrs. Chun. I called her before the police brought me here.
Good.
Go home. Pack bags for both of you. Enough for a week.
What? No.
I'm not. You are. His tone left no room for argument. By sunrise, there will be 2 of my men outside your bakery. They'll keep you safe while we find who did this. Tessa stared at him, then at the twins, then back at him. This is insane. Yes, Nikolai agreed. Welcome to my world. Tessa didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table, watching 2 armed men in dark suits patrol the street below her apartment window. Their presence made the neighborhood dogs bark. Mrs. Chun had peeked through her curtains 3 times already, clutching Caleb protectively each time a shadow moved. At 6:47 a.m., Tessa gave up on sleep entirely and did what she always did when the world felt too heavy. she baked. The bakery kitchen became her sanctuary. Flour on her hands, dough under her fingers, the familiar rhythm of kneading and shaping. She could almost pretend yesterday was a fever dream. Almost. Until she noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Then another one at the corner. And a man in a gray hoodie who'd been walking past her storefront for the third time in 20 minutes. Her hands stilled on the dough. Miss Grant, one of Nikolai's guards, appeared in her doorway, a broad-shouldered man named Pavel who'd introduced himself at midnight with all the warmth of a glacier. You should step away from the windows. This is my bakery. I have customers. Not today, you don't. He moved to the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Boss's orders. The boss doesn't own my business. Pavel's expression didn't change. The boss is keeping you alive. I'd call that a fair trade. Before Tessa could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. Silence. Then breathing. Hello, she repeated. You should have left them in the rain, a man's voice, digitally distorted. Now you're a problem. The line went dead. The phone slipped from her trembling fingers and clattered on the counter. Pavel was at her side instantly, picking it up, checking the number. What did they say? They said I'm a problem. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Oh God.
Caleb.
Where's? Your son is safe. We have a team with Mrs. Chin. Pavel was already on his radio. Target received a threat. Voice disguised. Likely close proximity. The radio crackled back. Copy. Tightening perimeter. Tessa's legs felt weak. She grabbed the counter for support. This can't be happening. I just helped 2 kids. That's all I did. That's all you needed to do. Pavel guided her away from the windows. Come on. Her bakery, her safe space, her livelihood, the dream she'd built from nothing after her divorce, now looked like a crime scene. Glass glittered among the scattered pastries. Cold air poured through the shattered window. And somewhere out there, people with guns and threats wanted her silent. I need to see my son, she said, her voice steadier than she felt.
Right now. Pavel nodded.
We move together.
Fast.
Stay close. They went through the back exit, Pavel scanning the alley like a soldier in a war zone. The morning sun cast long shadows between buildings. Every dumpster, every doorway could hide a threat. Mrs. Chen's apartment was 2 blocks away. It felt like 2 miles. They found Caleb sitting on Mrs. Chen's floral couch, eating cereal and watching cartoons, blissfully unaware. A third guard stood by the window.
Nana.
Caleb's face lit up. He was 7 years old, all gangly limbs and missing front teeth. Mrs. Chen made pancakes. Are we having a sleepover? Tessa pulled him into her arms, breathing in the scent of maple syrup and strawberry shampoo. Something like that, baby. Mrs. Chen appeared from the kitchen, worry creasing her elderly face. Tessa, what's happening? These men, the cars.
I'm sorry, Tessa whispered.
I'm so sorry for bringing this to your door.
Nonsense.
You help children. That's what good people do, Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. But maybe you should take that man's offer. Go somewhere safe. Pavel's radio crackled again. Boss is inbound. ETA 3 minutes. 3 minutes later, Nikolai Vosterkov walked into Mrs. Chen's cramped living room like he owned it. He'd changed from last night's rain-soaked suit into dark jeans and a leather jacket, but his eyes still carried that same dangerous intensity. He looked at Tessa, then at the guard. Report. Threatening phone call at 0647. Brick through the window at 0652. Message warned her to stay silent. White sedan fled before we could intercept. Nikolai's expression darkened. They're moving faster than I expected. Who are they? Tessa demanded, still holding Caleb. Who wants to hurt me? People who believe you know more than you do. He glanced at Caleb, then back to her. Pack your things. Both of you. You're coming with me. Where? Portland. Portland? That's where. She stopped, remembering the twin story. The delivery manifest. That's where. The question is never if, only how much they suffer before the end. The drive to Portland took 3 hours and a convoy of black SUVs that moved like a military operation. Tessa sat in the middle vehicle with Caleb buckled beside her, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Adrian and Arya rode in the car ahead with Nikolai, their silhouettes visible through the tinted rear window. Caleb pressed his nose against the glass. "Mama, are we going on vacation?" "Something like that, sweetie." "Then why do those men have guns?" Tessa's stomach twisted. She'd tried so hard to give him a normal childhood, birthday parties at the park, bedtime stories, Saturday morning cartoons. Now he was being smuggled out of the city, like a witness in a crime drama. "They're just keeping us safe," she said, smoothing his hair. "Everything's going to be okay." She wished she believed it. Pavel sat in the front passenger seat, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. Every few minutes, he'd glance back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between pity and professional concern. When they finally pulled into downtown Portland, the elevator opened directly into a penthouse that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture in shades of gray and white. A kitchen with appliances Tessa couldn't even name. Adrian and Arya were already sprawled on the leather sectional, their earlier trauma momentarily forgotten as they argued over the TV remote. Nikolai stood by the windows, phone to his ear, his voice low and sharp. "I don't care about his excuses, Anton. I want Victor Renshaw's location. He disappeared 3 months ago, and now my children are being trafficked? That's not coincidence. I know he was off the grid. Find him anyway." He ended the call and turned to find Tessa standing uncertainly in the entryway, Caleb half hidden behind her legs. "The bedrooms are down that hall," Nikolai said, his voice gentler than before. "Choose whichever you like. There's food in the kitchen. Security monitors every entrance." "How long have you had this place?"
Tessa asked.
6 years. I use it for business in Oregon." He paused. "Legitimate business. I own 3 shipping companies and a construction firm. Not everything I do involves guns and threats, Miss Grant. But enough does." Yes, he didn't apologize or make excuses. Enough does. Caleb tugged on Tessa's sleeve. "Mana, in hungry." Arya looked up from the couch. "There's pizza. Papa ordered it before we left. And ice cream. 3 flavors." Before Tessa could respond, Caleb had already darted toward the kitchen, drawn by the promise of junk food. Arya followed him, chattering about toppings. Tessa found herself alone with Nikolai for the first time since the police station. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For this. For keeping Caleb safe. I know you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and something else, gunpowder maybe. "My children trust you. That's rare enough to be valuable. And you're in danger because of my world. That makes you my responsibility. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility." Too late, but his expression softened slightly. "I received information during the drive. Would you like to hear it?" She wasn't sure she did, but she nodded anyway. "The white sedan that threw the brick? Registered to a shell company traced back to Neptune Global Freight, the same company that owned the van used in the kidnapping. We're working to identify the occupants." And the phone call bounced through 4 proxy servers. Untraceable. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. "But this is interesting." The image showed a man in his 40s with a scar running down his left cheek and cold, calculating eyes. "Victor Renshaw," Nikolai said. "My former logistics chief. He vanished 3 months ago after a shipment of pharmaceutical-grade medications disappeared from one of my warehouses. $2 million in product.
Gone.
Along with him. You think he took your children? I think he's orchestrating something larger." The Crown case, the trafficking route the kidnappers mentioned, was Victor's pet project. "I shut it down when I discovered he'd been running it without my authorization. He swore he'd disbanded the operation. Then he disappeared." Nikolai's jaw tightened. "I should have hunted him down then. I was merciful. Stupid. So this is revenge. This is business. Victor wants back in. The trafficking route is worth 30 million annually. If he delivers high-profile targets, like the children of a mafia boss, to the international buyers, he proves he still has power. That he's untouchable. Tessa felt sick. These are children. Babies. How can anyone? Because people like Victor don't see children. They see merchandise. Nikolai's voice dropped to something dark and dangerous. Which is why when I find him, I'll make sure he understands exactly what he tried to take from me. A burst of laughter came from the kitchen. Caleb and Arya had apparently become instant friends, bonding over chocolate ice cream. Your son seems resilient, Nikolai observed. He doesn't understand what's happening. I want to keep it that way. A luxury my children don't have. There was something almost sad in his voice. Adrian and Arya grew up knowing their father's business attracts danger. It's why they remembered the code word. Why they ran instead of trusting those men. That's a terrible way to grow up. Yes, he agreed. It is. Pavel appeared in the doorway. Boss. Anton just sent new intel. We traced Victor's phone to a location in southeast Portland. Warehouse District. But there's something else. He made a call yesterday at 11:32 p.m. To whom? That bakery in Tacoma. Miss Grant's landline. The room went cold. Tessa's voice came out barely above a whisper. He called my bakery? When? 30 minutes before the police contacted me about finding the twins, Nikolai said, his mind clearly racing. He knew. He knew where they were before anyone else. Which means he's been watching her this whole time, Pavel added grimly. Nikolai turned to Tessa, and for the first time, she saw something like fear flicker across his face. Not fear for himself, fear for her. He didn't just target you today, Nikolai said slowly. He targeted you the moment my children ended up at your door. This was never random, Miss Grant. What are you saying? I'm saying Victor chose your bakery deliberately. And we need to find out why. Nikolai had the CCTV footage from Tessa's bakery uploaded to his secure server within the hour. They gathered around the massive screen in the penthouse's office. Nikolai, Pavel, Anton, who'd arrived from Seattle, and Tessa, who couldn't shake the feeling that her quiet little bakery had somehow become the center of a nightmare. I barely use those cameras, Tessa said as Anton pulled up the files. They're mostly for insurance. The video quality isn't great. It'll be enough, Nikolai said. The timestamp read 9:23 p.m., the night of the storm. The camera showed the bakery's back alley, rain slashing sideways across the lens. For several seconds, there was nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of lightning. Then they appeared. Adrian first, stumbling into frame, soaking wet, and clearly exhausted. Arya seconds behind him, her school uniform plastered to her thin frame. They looked so small, so terrified. Tessa's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, they were running so hard. Wait, Nikolai said, leaning closer. Go back 5 seconds. Anton rewound. They watched again. This time, Nikolai pointed. There, in the corner. Movement. Anton enhanced the image. A figure in a dark hoodie, partially obscured by the dumpster, stepped into frame 3 seconds after the twins. Not chasing, following. Deliberately staying back. Watching. Someone was hurting them, Pavel said quietly. Pushing them toward this specific location. Toward my bakery, Tessa whispered.
But why? I'm nobody.
I don't have money or connections or... Fast forward, Nikolai interrupted. Show me after they went inside. The footage jumped to 9:47 p.m. The back door remained closed. Tessa had taken the twins upstairs by then. But the hooded figure emerged from the shadows, moved closer to the door, and stood there for nearly 3 minutes. Just watching. Waiting. Then he lifted his phone to his ear. That's the call, Anton said. 11:32 p.m. Your time would be 9:32 p.m. in this time zone. He's calling your landline, Miss Grant. But I didn't answer, Tessa said. I was upstairs with the twins. I didn't even hear it ring. He wasn't trying to reach you. Nikolai's voice was ice. He was confirming location. Making sure you were there, probably saw the lights on upstairs. Then he made another call, likely to my people, leaking the location himself.
Why? Tessa demanded.
If he wanted the twins found, why not just take them back himself? Because Victor is smart, Nikolai began pacing, his mind working through the angles. If the twins returned directly to me, they'd tell me about the van, the tattoo, the crown case. I'd know immediately it was an inside job. But if they were found by a civilian, confused and traumatized, their story becomes less clear. Details get muddy. And I become the variable, Tessa said, the pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. Someone he can use or eliminate depending on what the twins told me. Exactly, Nikolai turned to Anton. Can you enhance the frame where he's making the call? I need to see his face. And he's essentially surrounded her business. The room went silent.
Tessa felt her knees go weak.
He's been planning this. For months. My bakery. Her voice cracked. I've been there 4 years. I thought I was building something safe. Something mine. And the whole time, he was waiting for an opportunity. Nikolai finished grimly. You weren't random, Miss Grant. You were chosen. A civilian with no criminal ties, no security, no reason to be suspicious of new property owners in a gentrifying neighborhood. But why me specifically? Anton pulled up another screen, a map of the Seattle-Tacoma corridor. Red pins marked various locations. Your bakery sits exactly 30 miles from Riverside Academy, where the twins attend school. The highway accident that allowed them to escape? It happened right here, he pointed. 2 miles from the Tacoma exit. Victor likely planned for them to be driven through the night, disoriented, then rescued by someone he could monitor and control. Someone like a single mother with a struggling bakery and no resources to fight back, Tessa said bitterly. Yes, Nikolai's tone softened.
I'm sorry.
You were a pawn in a game you didn't know existed. Past tense. She met his eyes. I'm still a pawn. He's still out there. Not for long, Nikolai turned to Pavel. The warehouse in Southeast Portland. I want full surveillance. Thermal imaging, entry points, occupancy estimates. And find out what properties Victor owns in the area. He wouldn't make his move without a safe house nearby. Already on it, boss. What about my bakery?
Tessa asked.
My home? Everything I own is back in Tacoma. Both are compromised, Nikolai said bluntly. Victor owns the buildings around you. He has access, keys, surveillance. You can't go back. That's my life. And I'll buy you a new one. His voice was firm, but not unkind. A new location, better security, whatever you need. But right now, staying alive matters more than sourdough and rent payments. Tessa wanted to argue, to fight for the independence she'd worked so hard to build. But then she heard Caleb's laughter from the living room, playing with Arya, blissfully unaware that men with guns were circling his mother like sharks. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Anton's computer beeped. Boss, we've got movement. Thermal signatures at the Southeast Portland warehouse. At least 6 individuals, possibly more. Nikolai checked his watch. Midnight approach. Pavel, assemble the team. Light tactical. I want Victor alive and talking. You're going after him tonight? Tessa asked. He's already made his move. Now I make mine. Nikolai headed for the door, then paused. Stay here. Keep the children close. If anything happens. Nothing will happen, Pavel interrupted.
I'm staying.
4 guards on the floor, 2 in the lobby, counter-sniper on the adjacent building. Nikolai nodded, then looked at Tessa one last time. This ends tonight. Then he was gone, taking Anton and half the security team with him. Tessa stood alone in the office, staring at the frozen image of Victor's scarred face on the screen. The man who'd turned her life into a war zone. The man who'd used her kindness as a weapon. She hoped Nikolai found him. And she hoped Victor suffered. The warehouse squatted at the edge of the industrial waterfront like a rusted tombstone. Nikolai counted 8 exterior lights, half of them flickering. 3 vehicles in the lot, 2 vans and a sedan. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear into the river. Thermal shows 6 hostels inside, Anton whispered through the comm, centered in the main floor. Possible 7th in the office upstairs. Nikolai crouched behind a shipping container. Pavel and 4 others fanned out in tactical positions. The plan was simple. Breach from 3 points, overwhelm with speed, extract Victor alive. Simple plans never survived contact. Movement on the north side. One of his men reported. 2 more vehicles approaching. Nikolai's instinct screamed trap half a second before the floodlights ignited. The entire waterfront blazed white-hot brightness. His team was completely exposed. Back. Everyone back. Nikolai shouted, but gunfire erupted from the warehouse roof, positions they'd missed on thermal. Bullets sparked off concrete and metal. One of his men went down clutching his shoulder. It's an ambush. Pavel dove behind a forklift as the warehouse doors exploded outward. Not 6 hostiles, 12. Body armor. Automatic weapons. Military coordination. Victor had been waiting for them. Nikolai returned fire, his mind racing. They were outgunned, outpositioned, and trapped in a kill zone. He needed leverage. An exit. Something. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then he saw the message preview. I have something you want. Against every tactical instinct, he opened it. A photo. Taken 30 seconds ago based on the timestamp. Tessa and the children. In the penthouse. Through the window. His blood turned to ice. The phone rang. He answered while bullets whined overhead. Nikolai Vosterkov. Victor's voice was smooth, amused. Always so predictable. Did you really think I'd be sitting in some warehouse waiting for you? Where are you? Looking at your children right now. Beautiful view from the building across the street. 20th floor. You weren't joking about the luxury. Nikolai's world narrowed to a single point of rage. If you touch them. You'll what? You're pinned down at the docks with your best men. I'm holding all the cards, Victor laughed. Here's how this works. You surrender. Walk out with your hands up. My people will verify, then I'll leave the penthouse untouched. Everyone lives. You're lying. Maybe. But are you willing to bet their lives on it? The gunfire intensified. One of his SUVs erupted in flames. They had minutes before this became a massacre. I need proof they're alive, Nikolai said.
Now.
Hold on. The line muffled. Nikolai heard movement, then a door opening. Then Arya's voice, confused and frightened. Papa? Arya, baby, listen to me. The phone cut back to Victor. Satisfied? Now walk out, or the next sound you hear is a scream. Not Arya's, Tessa's. Then chaos on the other end. Shouting. A crash.
Victor cursing.
The line went dead. 20 minutes earlier, the penthouse. Tessa had just gotten Caleb to sleep when she heard it. A soft scraping sound. Metal on metal. Coming from the front door. Pavel was in the kitchen making coffee. The twins were in their room, playing a card game. The sound came again, someone picking the lock. Pavel, she called softly. Someone's at the door. He moved instantly, weapon drawn, pressing himself against the wall beside the entrance. He held up 3 fingers to Tessa, get the kids and hide. She ran to the twins' room. Adrian, Arya, we need to. The door exploded inward. Not the front door. The service entrance. Pavel hadn't been watching. 2 men in tactical gear poured through, weapons raised. Pavel fired twice, but more came from the main entrance, catching him in a crossfire. He went down hard. Tessa.
Arya screamed.
Instinct took over. Tessa grabbed both twins and ran for the master bedroom. Behind her, heavy boots thundered. They'd never make it. The hallway was too long, too exposed. Adrian yanked her sideways into a coat closet. They tumbled inside, Tessa pulling Arya in last and closing the door just as the gunman passed. Through the slats, she could see 3 men now, searching methodically. One spoke into a radio. Target secured. Repeat. Target secured. Then a 4th man entered. Taller. Older. moving with absolute confidence.
Victor Ranch.
Where are they? His voice was cold silk. I saw them come this way. Probably the bedrooms, sir. Find them. We don't have much time before Vosterkov realizes. Aria's phone buzzed in her pocket. The tiny sound seemed to echo like a gunshot. Victor's head snapped toward the closet. There. He crossed the hallway in 3 strides and reached for the door handle. Adrian whispered frantically, "Remember what you told us at the station? Always look for the exit?" "There is no exit," Tessa breathed. "Yes, there is," Adrian pointed up. "The vent." The closet had a ceiling vent, narrow, dusty, barely visible in the darkness. Too small for an adult, but maybe. Victor pulled the door open. "Run." Tessa shoved both twins upward. Adrian scrambled through first, then Aria. The vent groaned under their weight but held. Victor lunged forward, grabbing Tessa's arm and yanking her out into the hallway. She screamed and drove her elbow into his face, a move she'd learned in a self-defense class years ago and never thought she'd use. His grip loosened. She twisted away and ran, not toward safety but toward danger, drawing Victor away from the closet, away from the twins. "Forget her," Victor shouted to his men. "Find those kids." But Adrian and Aria were already crawling through the ventilation system, following the memory of a building schematic they'd glimpsed on Nikolai's computer. The vent led to the neighboring unit, currently vacant. They kicked through a grate and tumbled into an empty apartment just as gunfire erupted in the hallway. Nikolai tried calling back 5 times. Nothing. Then his phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. North roof exit. Twins safe. Woman fighting.
Pavel.
Pavel was alive. The twins had escaped. But Tessa. Change of plans. Nikolai barked into the calm, full assault. No prisoners except Victor. Move now. The docks descended into controlled chaos. Nikolai's team pushed forward with the fury of men who'd been playing defense too long. Within 6 minutes, they'd neutralized Victor's hired guns, mercenaries loyal only to paychecks, not causes. 2 surrendered immediately when the tide turned. But Victor wasn't there. He'd never been at the docks. Nikolai was already sprinting to his car, Pavel's coordinates glowing on his phone. The penthouse was 12 minutes away. He made it in 7, running red lights and shattering every traffic law the city had. The 20th floor hallway looked like a war zone. Pavel sat propped against the wall, blood seeping through a shoulder wound, directing 2 security guards who'd finally breached the stairwell. There in 2007, Pavel gasped. Twins got out through the vents. Miss Grant. She ran toward the fire escape, drew them away from the kids. How many? For including Victor. Boss. Pavel grabbed his arm. She didn't run to save herself. She ran to save them. Nikolai found them on the exterior fire escape 3 floors down. Tessa was backed against the railing, blood running from a cut above her eye, her leg bent at a bad angle. Victor stood 5 feet away, gun pointed at her chest. His 2 remaining men flanked him. "Nikolai," Victor called cheerfully, not lowering his weapon. "Just in time. We were discussing Miss Grant's remarkable maternal instincts. Sacrificing herself for children that aren't even hers. Touching, really." "Let her go," Nikolai's voice was deadly calm. "This is between us. Everything is between us." "That's the problem," Victor's smile faded. "You destroyed my operation. Cost me $30 million annually. Treated me like disposable trash. You traffic children. I provided a service. Supply and demand. But you," he spat. "You pretended to be a criminal while playing by rules. No kids, no civilians, no unnecessary casualties. You're weak, Nikolai. That's why you'll lose." "I haven't lost." Nikolai moved closer, hands visible but ready. "You're trapped on a fire escape with a hostage that's made you predictable. My men are in the building. Your mercenaries are dead or arrested. The Crown case is burned. You have nothing." "I have her." Victor pressed the gun against Tessa's temple. She whimpered but didn't break eye contact with Nikolai. "And if I can't have the twins, I'll settle for the woman they love. Leverage is leverage."
Papa?
Everyone froze. Adrian and Arya stood in the doorway to the fire escape, having circled back through the building. They looked small and terrified, but their eyes were clear. Don't, Nikolai started. We remember something else, Adrian said, his voice shaking but determined. From the van. The tattoo wasn't the only thing we saw. Victor's expression flickered. Shut up, kid. The driver took his mask off for a second. Arya continued. Said something about meeting you in Portland. Said you'd pay double for delivering us alive. Said you promised him a partnership, Adrian added. And that his name was Carson. Victor's face went pale. How do you? Carson Miles, Nikolai said quietly, the pieces clicking together. My quartermaster. The one who went missing yesterday. You didn't just betray me, Victor. You recruited my own people. Several of them, actually, but Victor's confidence was cracking. You're finished, Nikolai. Your organization is rotted from within. Maybe Nikolai took another step. But unlike you, I know who my real allies are. Tessa moved. It wasn't dramatic or heroic, just a sudden drop, using her injured leg to collapse downward and sideways. Victor's gun tracked her movement, his finger tightening on the trigger. Nikolai fired first. The shot took Victor in the shoulder. His gun clattered across the metal grating. His men raised their weapons, but Anton appeared behind them, his own gun steady. Don't, Anton advised. They dropped their weapons. Victor slumped against the railing, clutching his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted with rage and pain. This changes nothing. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering who else I turned. Who else? Federal agents are already en route, Nikolai said calmly. Along with documentation of the Crown case, the trafficking routes, and testimony from the mercenaries you hired. You'll spend your life in a federal prison. Alone. Forgotten? You're turning me over to the feds?
Victor left bitterly.
Since when do you cooperate with law enforcement? Since you made this personal, Nikolai knelt beside Tessa, gently checking her injuries. Since you threatened my children. Since you destroyed an innocent woman's life for your revenge. Tessa's hand found his. The twins. Safe. Because of you. Sirens wailed in the distance, not just police but federal vehicles. Nikolai had called in favors with contacts who'd wanted Victor for years. Let the government cage this animal. Let him rot in bureaucratic hell. 6 weeks later, the new bakery opened on a sunny Saturday in Seattle's Capitol Hill district. The storefront was twice the size of the Tacoma location, with actual security, proper lighting, and an apartment upstairs that didn't leak when it rained. Tessa's Sweet Corner 20, the sign read. Inside, Caleb helped Arya arrange cupcakes while Adrian argued with Tessa about optimal frosting techniques. The boy had decided he wanted to be a pastry chef, much to his father's bewildered amusement. Nikolai watched from the doorway, coffee in hand. Pavel stood nearby, his shoulder healed, looking far less intimidating in casual clothes. You didn't have to do all this, Tessa said, appearing beside him with flour on her cheek and genuine happiness in her eyes. The location, the equipment, the security system that's probably monitoring half the block. Yes, I did, his voice was soft. You lost everything protecting my children. This is the least I can do. They're good kids. Easy to protect. You jumped off a fire escape with a broken ankle to keep Victor's attention away from them. I stumbled. There's a difference, but she smiled. Besides, they've been teaching Caleb card tricks and Russian swear words. I'm not sure who's protecting whom anymore. Through the window, they could see normal life happening. Dog walkers. Couples with strollers. Students from the nearby university.
No guns. No threats. Just life.
The feds confirmed Victor's testimony led to 17 arrests in the trafficking network, Nikolai said. The Crown case is permanently shut down. Carson Miles and 3 other traders are cooperating for reduced sentences. And you?
I'm reforming.
Slowly, he met her eyes. Turns out having your children almost stolen makes you reconsider your life choices. Legitimate business is boring but safer. Will they come here? The twins. Every Saturday. They've already claimed that corner table as their homework spot, he paused. If that's okay with you. Nikolai, they can come whenever they want. She hesitated. They're part of our lives now. Mine and Caleb's. That doesn't just disappear. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. Inside, Adrian successfully piped a perfect rose onto a cupcake and hooped in triumph. Arya rolled her eyes but smiled. Caleb clapped. A mafia boss, a single mom, and 3 children bound together by violence and saved by kindness. Not the family any of them expected. But family nonetheless. You know, Tessa said thoughtfully, I still don't know what you actually do for your legitimate businesses. Nikolai's smile was enigmatic.
Shipping.
Import-export. Very boring paperwork. Some construction consulting. Sure. I'm serious. I even have business cards now. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine in the morning sunlight. The stolen crown scheme was dead. The traitors were caged. The twins were safe. And in a bakery in Capitol Hill, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the sound of children's laughter, Nikolai Vosterkov discovered something he'd thought lost forever.
Peace.